So welcome everybody to the second session today. We're so pleased that you're able to make it and join us to hear our wonderful presenters. We have two presenters today. They will each be presenting for 1/2 hour. And so the first one will be Dr. Brenda Anderson from Women's and Gender Studies at Luther College. Her topic will be reaching a global audience on a global topic based on her OER that she created with some others, Global Femicide, Voices of Indigenous Women and Girls Torn from Our Midst. After her presentation, there will be opportunity for questions, and then we will start with Dr. Barbara Rule. Her presentation, she's a professor of musicology, also at Luther College. Her presentation will be on open access is the key from perfect timing to right on time. And then her presentation will be followed by questions. So I think I'm not gonna take too much time with introductions so we can just get right to you. So I'll get Brenda to start.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for coming. I know it's busy and I was able to attend the earlier presentation this morning and just really appreciated being a participant and just as happy to show you some of the work that I've worked with OER. I'm going to share my screen because this is a bit of a show and tell. And so hopefully everybody can see that. Is there a thumbs up just to let me know? This is the cover of our book on global femicide. And I'll tell you what my purpose is here in a moment, but I want to actually use some of the content here to just lead us into this topic. This is a book on missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. And so there's a proper protocol for, addressing this issue. And so I wanted to start with the land acknowledgement that is in this book. And of course, I think most of you are coming from Treaty 4 land, and that's where this book originated. And much of the work, not all of it, has been done. So I do want to acknowledge that the treaties that were made here were between the Canadian government and the Nahiawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota nations, and that we continue to live on that land and the homeland of the Métis Michif Nation. These lands continue to be shared with a wide variety and diversity of people. And for those, if you aren't here, the Nahiawak language originally referred to Regina as Oskana Ka'asasteki, which literally means the place where bones are piled up. And so we are also known as Pile of Bones, and that is the original name of Wascana Park, where our university is located. But in this book, we also have authors from all over the world, and they are representing Indigenous peoples and the issues around missing and murdered Indigenous women. So to think about that connection that can be done through this sort of publication, in each of those countries, the many nations of Indigenous people have been subjected to colonization and continue to resist colonizing systems and violence such as femicide. To each of these nations and their people, we acknowledge the devastation to the land you and your ancestors live upon, and the destruction of your language, culture, spirituality, and families. We seek to join our acknowledgements, our respect for one another, our mourning, and our resistance to make each of us stronger in our work. And so that was the land acknowledgement that is in this book. I want to, whoops, now that always happens. I don't know why that happened. Sorry, folks. There we go. I wanted to just acknowledge that my name is Brenda Anderson, and I grew up as a settler, unaware of being a treaty person, but coming to that awareness through the hard work of other people around me, especially Indigenous women, mothers, elders, aunties, daughters, around this issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. This uh, kind of work means that we really need to think about collaboration and representation, who was part of this book in its inception and in the work that we continue to do. So some of those themes are what I wanted to draw out as to why this kind of platform works so well for advocacy scholarship. This is the front page of our book, and just to read to orientate you to what we're doing. Um, we laid our Canadian stories alongside the global phenomenon of femicide in other colonized countries such as Mexico and Guatemala, and we wanted to underscore the common interlocking effects of racism and sexism on Indigenous women. Family members, scholars and researchers, artists, activists, and policymakers provided their decade-long perspective, and I'll speak to that in a moment, providing testimony and evidence that sexualized and racialized violence is not only a product of historic colonization, but continues to manifest in entrenched systems of colonization and global femicide. The analysis and the heart of all the authors is generously shared, exemplifying what resistance looks like. So, this introduction speaks to the variety of voices that was really important for us to include, and the ease with which we were able to do that with this kind of platform. So, what I would want to do today with you folks is just to tell a bit of the story of how this second edition evolved and talk a little bit about the benefits of that book. But to do that, I have to talk a bit about the actual book itself. Um, the blessing that we had, and if you haven't been on a book, I'm assuming that you have, but you may not, but this might give you a sense of how what it looks like, the contents. And when we're talking about um, a topic like this, it is very important to be guided by elders. And Elder Betty McKenna provides us with a blessing that I'd like to use today to sort of orient us to the gravity of this conversation. Miigwech, Great Spirit, please hear us. We are your children, small and weak. In my humbleness, I ask for a blessing for mothers who have not returned home, a blessing for the children who years later still wait, a blessing for grandmothers who long for that touch, a blessing for fathers who feel rage inside but keep quiet. O Great Spirit, a blessing for a young spirit who has joined you too soon, a blessing for a sister whose tears cannot be quelled. A blessing for a mother who hears her beloved child's voice in the dawn. A blessing for the grandfather who is always looking for her darling face. A blessing for the little brother who will not let anyone sit in her place. A blessing for the ones who have found their resting place, ones who suffer guilt, ones who suffer helplessness. O Great Spirit, keep them in your care. Ease their burden day by day. Let the memories of her linger soft as bunny fur. Let the sun shine brighter because she is over there, and whisper gently in her ear that she is loved incredibly. And we whom she has left behind will in prayer forever thank you because you sent her here. That's the blessing that accompanies every reading from this book. Um, the cover of this book um, is, sorry, I'm just needing to get back to that. There we go. Um, the nature of this book was always intended to include voices of all peoples. This is not just an academic book. As it says, it has activists, it has artists. We have different mediums in this book. And again, the ease of working digitally really helped with that. I wanted to draw your attention to the cover of this book. Maybe I can enlarge it just a bit. This was a piece that we commissioned from an artist. Some of you may know the work of Jennifer Leeson. She's an artist at the U of C, U of Calgary. And I wanted to just talk about her curatorial notes, which are here as well, but I just want to have you focus on the picture itself. She prayed about this. She visioned for this piece. And so it's a very careful and reflective piece of what this book is about. She said, the teaching of this is that the ancestors are watching over you. Whenever you are lost in the darkness or trying to find your way home amidst the pine trees, remember that the medicine and helpers are all around you. The grandfathers and grandmothers are walking with you always. They will help you. All you have to do is ask. You never walk alone. The ancestors look after you. They love you. And so the curatorial notes tell us that you see Grandmother Moon at the top here. She is always watching. And this was the logo of the Sisters in Spirit that worked so hard to bring this topic to global attention. Grandfather Sun is also here, and the core of Mother Earth is down below here in the red. In the center are the 7 rocks, and those reflect the 7 sacred teachings: love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. At Luther College, we just had the 7 grandfather teachings. Those are the same. And this is also symbolic of the sweat lodge that is always held under Grandfather Sun. There's a deep connection to the land, and it is a healing painting meant to summon the ancestors and elements for a brighter future of hope. The hummingbirds that you see here around are symbolic of the 7 generations, those that came before us and those yet to come. And the stars in the sky are a reminder that we are all a spark of Gitche Manitou, of that great spirit. So that is just an introduction to some features of this. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and then come back to the book as well. A bit of the story of how this book evolved might explain what I think are the blessings that we got from this book. Um, U of R Press Books came to be an excellent choice for this type of book. It began with our conference in 2008 on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And we invited people from around Canada and Mexico to come to this conference. We had over 300 people attending, and the people who attended were family members, people from NGOs, support workers, policymakers, the police force. We brought family members from Mexico, and of course, academics. And after that conference, we were actually approached by Oxford University Press to put the book into, or put the conference into a book. We declined Oxford, and that might seem odd to some people because that would be a feather in the cap, supposedly. But for us, it was really important for this to be land-based. This is a project of the heart. It is about advocacy scholarship. And we wanted the people that were working on that first edition that was published in 2010, we wanted that book to be published by people who understood the land, the people here, the culture. And so we wanted to be published by the University of Regina Press. And so the first edition was made in a hard copy. And here's I will hold up the first edition, which was called Torn from Our Midst. So that became part of the title of our second book. But this Torn from Our Midst, Voices of Grief, Healing, and Action from the Missing Indigenous Women Conference of 2008, took the lectures and talks of the conference and either transcribed them, or some of them were so powerful that we also included a DVD. And that's how we dealt with different mediums back in 2010, just a mere 14 years ago. And in that DVD, we have people like Elder Maria Campbell, author Morningstar Mercredi, Marta Perez, who is a Zapatista leader from Mexico, and others, students as well, who attended and were part of the organizing of the conference. And they're in there. And that DVD was always part of the favorite part of my students in my missing and murdered Indigenous women's class, who we use this and other books as a text. So what happened was that a few years ago, the first edition ran out of books. They didn't have any more. So U of R Press invited us to consider writing a second edition. And so I consulted with my co-editors of the time were Dr. Wendy Kubik and Dr. Mary Hampton. And we decided that, yes, absolutely, this book needs updating. Unfortunately, this is a topic that keeps on evolving, and that we would be pleased to do that work. We realized, though, in those 14 years, this is things grow and we come to awareness that although we had Dr. Shawneen Pete as one of the facilitators of the conference, we had no Indigenous editors, and that was simply wrong. And so I asked my colleague, Shawneen, who was our Indigenous engagement person at one time at the U of R, if she would consider working with me and with Wendy, and she said absolutely. And then we also asked Carrie Barassa, who we all worked with through Resolve, if she would also consider lending her voice to this book, and she also agreed. So there were 5 of us now as editors for this second edition. We originally worked with the University of Regina Press, but different situations and changing, we moved over to this open source, and I'm so grateful to Isaac Mulalawi, who was the editor at the time and worked endlessly and patiently with me, technophobe that I am, to create this second edition. And the benefits of it being so flexible and diverse really immediately presented themselves to me, not in necessarily a good way. I'm going to share the screen and show you just how important it is to use open source for some of these reasons. Um, as I mentioned, Carrie Barassa was one of our editors, and you no longer see her name on as an editor. Many of you will know that that it was revealed that she was what we now call a pretendian, and she had posed for over 20 years with Métis ancestry. And so we were this was just literally weeks after our book launch, we realized that we in no way could have her representing an Indigenous voice in this book. And so we had a meeting in 2021 and agreed that she would no longer be listed as an editorial team, as part of our team. We removed a chapter that she had written, which was particularly egregious because it was supposed to be her story of her ancestry and construction of an Indigenous identity. And then we also looked at other chapters developed with her. We retained one that Wendy Kubik had by and large written the entire portion of that gives us the history. We removed a family story because she had been the connection there, and the family, we asked every author how they felt. They asked us to remove it. And we kept her, though, in a very academic, quantitative survey, multi-year work on Northern Saskatchewan. Again, her work was minimal and it was on interpersonal violence, so incredibly important. So we retained that with Darlene Yushka, Mary Hampton, Melissa Wirch, and Tracy Knudsen. So without the flexibility of this book, we would not have had the ability to do that. And that, again, that just came very quickly to our attention. And we needed to be struck with that. So again, first of all, that flexibility became really important to us. Now, I mentioned that we have a variety of voices here, and I'm just going to go back here. Um, that again is part of the benefit of this kind of source, that we have different mediums here. Just to show you what it looks like here, we have the introduction, we have a section on epistemic erasure rejected. We really wanted to focus on, yes, what the problem is, but also the leaders, whether they're academics or activists, people who are making a difference. This is a kind of advocacy scholarship where you don't want to portray one piece of a group as the victims. These are also the leaders who are changing things. So we begin by addressing the systems that continue to colonize. In this piece, we took the work from the DVD and now it's here online, easily accessible, and definitely one of the favorite pieces of my students who are required to look at these and comment on them in their journal. So it is so important that these not just be dry words on a piece of paper, that we have the emotions, we have the nuances of these people who brought themselves to this. So we do have, I'm not going to play them, but just to show you how the interface works, and little old me, who knows nothing about technology, was able to do this with Isaac's work. So if any of you are considering doing this, rest assured you would be amply supported and be able to create what I think is kind of magical. So we worked on the systemic pieces here, and then more of the global history. And I mentioned at the beginning, it said, you know, this was a reflection on the past 10 years. This book was published about 10 years after the first edition, and a lot had changed. So we wanted to keep a lot of the core information, but then update it. And in my introduction, I talk about that because it's really important to know where we came from and where we're heading. Theories are built upon theories. And so we kept some of the original pieces. Some of the contributors wanted to do that and then updated with a new one. And so Kim Erno, for instance, from Mexico, wanted to keep his original piece, but then update it. And so a reader is guided through that to kind of reflect on what has changed. And it's both depressing and hope-filled. And that's what this book was about. Other people wanted to kind of rewrite it. And Cynthia Bejarano was talking about Ciudad Juarez. I want to show you again some flexibility here that happened. She rewrote this and updated it. And in that hard format, which I still love books, don't get me wrong, but we had a few black and white pictures. And of course, publishers are concerned about how much and so on. But here we have stories of families ripped apart, stories of people who have gone, who have been murdered, or and what do the families do about that afterwards? And so pictures, right, are worth 1,000 words. And I'm just scrolling down to show you how many pictures we were able to capture and the powerfulness of these. This is one of the mothers, Paula Flores, that came to the conference, and she also wrote in this book. And she and Cynthia are speaking through the U.S.-Mexico border fence during an anti-violence protest in 2009. You know, ongoing pictures. We were able to put in as many as we wanted, as many things that would help people connect to this topic and take action, right? And so this is just full of different pictures depicting resistance movements, artwork in Mexico, things that you just really need to be able to profile. And I was so pleased that I was able to do this and put these in. This is, you know, at parades of awareness, pieces that show up in the newspapers. And folks, we can change this at any time, right? We can update this. So what this helped us do is recreate what is very much lived experience, stories, narratives, heart, in ways that that a book, you know, traditional book wasn't perhaps able to do. It also helped us show the many faces of people who aren't the academics, right? Who are the family members or the people who are marching, the tireless work of people. It was really important for us to do. So that kind of shows you the variety of voices and the media pieces that we were able to do. One other piece here, also, some of you may know Dr. Moreno. I want to mention him. He's now at the U of S and is the head of the graduate studies for Indigenous Studies. And he chose to keep his original piece, but then update it in a very short piece. And so this really lent itself. We have family members, as I said, and then we have some really technical research. This was a report from the Department of Justice on the work that they have done and from their perspective. When we do this work, when we're involved in this, we want to make sure that not a single person does not see themselves in this work, no matter what their career is or who they are. This is a global phenomenon. Femicide is people who are murdered because they are female, and it occurs with indigenous populations in order to colonize. In Mexico, entire villages are destroyed because they were in the way of the PPP, which is the whole thing around fair trade, making a highway, seaports, airplanes, trucks, what have you, accessible for one big resource stealing business to go up to the States and be processed and sold back to the people. So you can understand this is very much a piece of advocacy work, getting that information out to people. So, oops, I think I went too far here. There we go. Wanted to highlight Marta Perez's talk in 2008 that we kept in here as 4 different videos. Marta, as I said, is a Zapatista leader who was wanted by her government. She had to escape to Europe. Their village, San Salvador Atenco, was one that was destroyed for this airport, and they resisted, not with violence. The machete is a symbol of the farmers, of the laborers, but we were able to acquire a machete for her to speak to this. Kim Erno was the translator. We have this in 4 parts so that this hour-and-a-half talk, they were able to work at that. So I don't have much time. I have to finish off, but I just want to say that what we are able to do with this in terms of allowing the scope of people to participate. Future plans could be connecting to forums, connecting to other links like our own national inquiry on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I just want to encourage anyone who is considering this to not be scared of the technology, but to also seek out the books that you can acquire in this way. And it helps with no cost for your students. It helps with all kinds of things. I'm so sorry. I've gone on a little too much. That's what happens when you get passionate. And I recognize that Barb should be coming up now and talking. So if you have questions, I can see your chat and I can also answer them in the chat as we are here later on.
Could I ask
Hi, Robert.
just a technical question? Hi. So is a print version still possible with your book? Like what happens when you've got all these videos and all these extra pictures and stuff?
That's a really good question.
Or is it just digital now? Is it?
It is purely digital, and I'm still teaching synchronously with students from all over, particularly northern Saskatchewan. So in some ways that's a benefit because they may not have access to libraries and other sources. So it works really well for me to have just the digital. And we haven't considered that. What I've considered for extra work is to add the voices of the students on. Like this is a peer-reviewed book, but you could also have a section with some of the journal entries from students. So you could start having them participate as well. So I think I like the idea of it being a live document and not the closed book, mostly because of the topic, right? Because it's something that keeps evolving. Yeah. So that might be a disadvantage. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Well,
Sean is saying, yeah, you could, yeah,
yeah.
and students do print it off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. So I think we want to hear from Barb because again, an amazing story. I'll mute myself.
All right, let me get my PowerPoint up here. So thanks for having me. My publishing experience is admittedly very different from Brenda Anderson's because my open educational resources are both self-referential in nature, meaning that they're illness narratives. My specific writer's lens was that of an extroverted and always cheerful music history professor, suddenly diagnosed with advanced uterine cancer in late July 2020, that is, during the early days of the pandemic. Instead of teaching sleepy-eyed students in Zoomland, I went into 8 months of active cancer care. With the pandemic keeping the world in check, I also had to rely exclusively on my chosen family in town to look after me, a non-partnered individual. I've included a picture of a beloved colleague's miniature schnauzer named Winston on this slide to give you a sense of the quality support I received during this time of trial and to express my sincere gratitude to everyone involved. Let's fast forward to February 2021, when I had undergone major abdominal surgery, 6 rounds of chemotherapy, and just started radiation treatments. Believe it or not, I was woken up in the middle of the night by my inner GPS and told, quote, "Turn on the computer and start typing now." 45 minutes later, I was staring at 15 of what would be ultimately 16 chapter titles of a book manuscript to be entitled Perfect Timing. I finished the first complete draft of this illness narrative 3 years ago at the end of April 2021. Looking back, I'm still stunned that I, as a music history professor, had not written about my favorite dead people, that is, German court musicians from the early 18th century. Instead, I had provided a highly personal glimpse into how a critical illness had turned my busy life as an academic upside down. I figured that only close family and friends, you know who you are, would be interested in reading about my lived experience as a cancer survivor. I was wrong. My colleague, Professor Scott Wilson, an English instructor and Writing Across the Disciplines coordinator at Luther College here at the University of Regina, told me that he would be happy to use my recollections on coping with cancer during a pandemic in the winter 2022 semester. Clocking in at roughly 52,000 words spread out over 98 PDF pages, my patient's story would be on the required reading list for his English 110 class on medicine and mortality. "Count me in," I replied, absolutely delighted. Long story short, given the tight timeline, 7 months, and a pandemic to grapple with, I let go of my initial plan to find a traditional publisher, as well as donate all royalties to the Saskatchewan Cancer Foundation. Instead, I decided to disseminate my illness narrative as a zero-cost resource on the University of Regina Open Education and Publishing as an OEP platform. This felt wonderful because I'd been advocating for the use of open source materials as a university professor for ages. I remember being questioned about that by my dean in the late 2000s. She could not understand why I, a recently tenured instructor, would refuse to adopt costly textbooks and do my part, quote, "to help support the University of Regina bookstore." Her words, not mine. Enough said. Perfect Timing went public on the Pressbooks platform on December the 23rd, 2021. How would readers, specifically individuals who are still adjusting to a pandemic university setting, react to my recollections, given that they did not know me from a bar of soap? Thank you, Scott Wilson, for challenging your students to view my often unexpectedly humorous story through a highly academic lens. Had I, as the author, ever thought about my writing efforts as a quest illness narrative, pondered the validity or therapeutic use of my writing, and compared it to other female writers' perspectives on illness? Not really. But I knew in my heart that writing from the inside out was a most therapeutic exercise that bore repeating. During my visit to Scott Wilson's virtual classroom in early March 2022, I announced that a sequel was in the works. It would focus on what the first 15 months of my recovery efforts had looked and felt like. I finished the first complete draft of Right on Time nearly 2 years ago, in late July 2022. Intriguingly, this sequel ended up being twice as long as its predecessor. Why? Because navigating my new reality as a recent cancer survivor turned out to be much more complex and took much longer than anticipated. That was why I promised myself not to rush through the process of getting Right on Time published. I also asked for and received quality help to transfer over 90,000 words online. Thank you, Luther College, for allowing me to spend funds from my professional expense account on a student assistant during the fall 2023 semester when I was teaching 3 classes online as well, actually in person. To be honest, I'm still amazed that both Perfect Timing and Right on Time got published at all. My energy level, which in hindsight bordered on superhuman prior to my diagnosis, has never been the same since finishing active care 3 years ago. In other words, to this day, I require and will prioritize serious downtime over excelling in an academic rat race of sorts. Or maybe old age has just caught up with me. Pick your pick. This brings me to the highlights and lowlights of choosing Pressbooks, a no-name publishing platform, for lack of a better phrase, not once, but twice over the course of 3 years. Let's begin with the good news. I find the interface of Pressbooks easy to use because it's reminiscent of Microsoft Word. I was also impressed with how much more user-friendly the platform has become over time. For example, in 2021, I lost some of my editing work online because I'd forgotten to press the Save button. Now that feature has been automated. This signals to me that the Pressbook software folks are keen to improve user experience overall. My favorite part about choosing an open access platform is that I have full control over both the editing and the publishing process. Returning to my manuscripts to fix typos and/or update expired hyperlinks at any time never gets old. On the contrary, I consider it a privilege. After all, in my academic neck of the woods, it is impossible for authors to ask for changes and for editors to grant them once the final version of a manuscript has gone to print. Telling potential readers that my narratives are freely accessible on the internet is similarly satisfying. I remember wondering in December how long it would take the Google gods to acknowledge my sequel. Imagine my surprise and delight when a direct link to Right on Time showed up on my computer screen within 48 hours after it had gone live. And for what it's worth, I spent those 2 days fixing up content and formatting issues flagged by astute readers who had been sent a link by me shortly after I had pressed the Go Public button. In hindsight, my open access publishing experience has felt like being treated to a glimpse of the maximum impact factor that I always hope for as an author. A girl can dream. The anonymized student feedback provided by Scott Wilson in mid-May 2022 had already assured me that my recollections were resonating with a post-secondary crowd of sorts. But I had no idea that I could press the Analytics tab on the Pressbooks platform to get a real sense of how many quote-unquote visitors had engaged with my writing and to what extent. Shown here is a screenshot from yesterday afternoon, which covers the last 28 days and confirms nearly 300 visits. Which chapter of Perfect Timing has been viewed the most since April the 14th, 2024? The answer is chapter 6. There's a first time for everything, chemo round 1. That kind of feedback is surprisingly rewarding, I find, especially when I click on the stats regarding the total number of visits, over 4,000, and page views close to 10,000, since Perfect Timing went live on December 23, 2021. This brings me to the lowlights of choosing to publish open access. As a bilingual academic at the full professor rank, I've worked with my fair share of fancy schmancy publishers all over the world since I finished graduate school nearly 30 years ago. As a result, I was expecting the Pressbooks interface to be able to fulfill all my wishes as an author and editor. I was crushed when I encountered a plethora of layout and formatting issues. For example, the spacing sometimes goes funky for no apparent reason, and it is not yet possible to hyperlink chapter titles. The culprit, according to the Pressbooks gurus, Microsoft Word. The solution, according to yours truly, scheduling twice as much time for formatting your manuscript online, and if necessary, adjusting as in lowering your expectations as to the online appearance of the final product. In the end, I decided to obsess over the quality of the content rather than the packaging, that is, behave like the no-name brand shopper I am in real life. My next point, no control, is code for me fretting way too much about my readers' reactions to my writing. That is not surprising, however. After all, I have 18-year-olds evaluate my classroom teaching every fall and winter semester, and to this day, I get triggered badly by experts in my field, tasked with assessing the quality of my scholarship or lack thereof, as part of academia's dreaded blind peer review. Given that perfect timing was to be used as a textbook, I felt it was my duty as an educator to take back control and steer my target audience in the right direction. To that end, I included a nifty appendix entitled Leading Reading Questions. For Right on Time, I opted in favor of sharing some words of inspiration meant for anyone who would like to follow in my footsteps as an author in the final chapter. Next, I'd like to address a purely practical matter. How many people can access a Pressbooks manuscript that is still set to the private mode at the same time? In my experience, it turned out to be only one. My student assistant and I solved that problem by creating and sticking to a My Turn to Work online schedule. That decision not only increased our overall level of productivity, but also helped me stay sane as we inched our way to the ready-to-launch date. This brings me to the topic of minimum impact. For the record, the University of Regina is listed as the publisher of my 2 educational resources. Was I expecting them to act like a traditional academic press and market my work online and in person to a global audience? Of course not. After all, I had not spent a penny on subsidizing my publications, something which is still very common in the humanities. Believe it or not, many academic presses, such as Taylor and Francis, to name but one, now provide authors with the option to turn their publications into open access educational resources. However, to recoup their costs, they have been known to charge authors a hefty article processing fee. Go figure. In other words, it was going to be my responsibility to drum up business for as an increased traffic to my open textbooks URLs on the University of Regina's Open Educational Publishing website. And I will talk about my efforts more on the next slide. This leads me to 3 other questions I ended up pondering during the writing process. Does doing research on yourself as a university professor being faced with a cancer diagnosis qualify as scholarship, I wondered? As a music historian in love with a distant past, I had clearly not been exposed to enough phenomenological studies to know the answer, which is yes. In fact, there's even a peer-reviewed journal entitled Life Writing. Is it still rare for academics to share details of their own lived experiences? You bet. My hope is to have started a trend of sorts that will encourage others in and outside of the ivory tower, to talk more openly about subject matters historically viewed as a taboo. I also wondered how I, as the author of an illness narrative, fit in my university's open educational resources by subject directory online. Yes, there's such a thing. To my great surprise, there was no literary genre category for autobiographies and biographies to be found when Perfect Timing was published in late December 2021. Rest assured, a heading to that effect was added in record time to draw attention to my authorial efforts. Finally, let me address the topic of barriers of the intended and the unintended kind. To deter others from cloning my books, which is common practice in the world of open educational resources, I put the most restrictive Creative Commons license known to mankind into place. That is, read online only. No downloads are possible. Sorry, Hollywood. The second barrier concerns a complaint lodged by my older sister of all people. She still lives in my childhood home in Bavaria, Germany, which I left nearly 40 years ago after finishing high school to join other family members on Vancouver Island and to attend university. You know that my English isn't good enough to read your book without consulting a dictionary, she argued. But even I can tell that the German version of your book offered by Google Translator online is beyond awful, my sister added, sounding frustrated. Was a translation by yours truly in the works, she wondered? Not really, I replied. As someone who does scholarly translations for a living, I can tell you that it's an incredibly time-consuming job to produce a good one. But it has made me wonder whether any of my readers have made use of translation software and whether or not it added value to their overall reading experience. It gives me great pleasure to share this rewards slide with you. Who knew it was going to be this much fun to share my health journey in 2023 and 2024 with communities that were not exclusively made up of university students and fellow academics. And don't get me wrong, I love you guys. For example, in March 2023, I reflected on my experience in Miracles Are No Longer Required, Life Writing as a Healing Tool. This article ends with me sharing what it was like to return to campus after an extended medical leave and a 6-month research sabbatical during which I completed a lengthy sequel. The short answer to that loaded question is horrible. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that Perfect Timing would be nominated for 2 Saskatchewan Book Awards in the spring of 2023. While it won in neither the first book nor the City of Regina category, it was the first online publication to ever be nominated. This not only made me feel incredibly proud, but also prompted me to include this honor on my faculty website in May 2023. In July 2023, I had the privilege of presenting my patient's story via video link to the senior leadership team of the Saskatchewan Cancer Agency. I made a point of telling a room full of highly educated health professionals how much I liked their newly overhauled website. It had been less than inspiring 3 years ago when I was looking for information online as a cancer patient. Now, none other than Costa Amerigas, a respected former CBC Saskatchewan news anchor, like think Peter Mansbridge, and fellow cancer survivor, welcomes new patients to the Regina and Saskatoon cancer clinics in a professionally shot and produced video. The thought of hiring him to do a flashy book trailer for Right on Time did cross my mind last year, albeit only for a second. In November 2023, I was contacted by James Thibault, the Senior Open Educational Resources Librarian at Bentley University in the US. Could he interview me for a book chapter he was writing on open educational resources success stories? Clearly, somebody was reading my faculty profile. You can read all about our chat in an open access article that was published just a few weeks ago. I owe James a huge debt of gratitude for encouraging me to contact libretext.org, or the Wikipedia of open educational resources, as he called this dedicated team of volunteers based in the US who host this amazing website. Long story short, they are currently in the process of harvesting, their word not mine, Perfect Timing, and will add my book to their human development section sometime this spring. All I can say to that is wow and thank you. I've been told that it might just increase the impact factor of my story exponentially. Some of you may also have already seen my short article in the OEP Spring 2024 newsletter, Writing from the Inside Out. My most important goal in 2024, however, is to release a highly entertaining audiobook version of Perfect Timing, accent and all. Thank you once again to Scott Wilson for pitching this brilliant idea to me in an effort to help me remove yet another barrier from engaging with my readers. I would like to conclude today by telling you about a brand new zero-cost research project of mine. My friend and colleague, Dr. Samantha Owens, who is based at the University of Queensland in Australia, and I will, over the course of the next 2 or 3 years or so, oversee a multi-authored study of court musicians and money in Baroque Germany. Spoiler alert, many of them, including my favorite Kapellmeister, Johann Friedrich Fasch, lived paycheck to paycheck in the early 18th century, despite working 24/7. I consider my involvement in this book project a win-win situation. It allows me to put my newly acquired skills as an author and editor of 2 open educational resources to good use and return to my roots as an archival researcher. As a highly privileged academic, I also get to share high-quality research for free with a global community of learners. To that end, I hope to have inspired you today to give open educational resources like mine a chance as a reader, fellow author, or both. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to stop my share.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you, Brenda. We do have some time left for questions. If you want to either grab your microphone or put a question in the chat. I think that well, today's presentations, both of these, the work of both of these authors were not OER grant funded. Is that correct, Brenda? I wasn't sure about yours.
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
so all of this work that you did on your own, except for a little bit of funding for your student assistant, Brenda. So it's quite amazing. Well, I mean, you've expressed all the learning that you did along the way, as well as some of the amazing things you're able to accomplish on your own. Marketing is a, as you were mentioning, Barb, it can be pretty difficult to get the word out there. I don't know if anyone.
To be honest, I do remember an email from you and also from Isaac asking whether I wanted a book launch. And remember, Brenda did have a book launch.
I did.
And I just thought, no, I don't have time for that. But then, you know, I agreed to write a little article in the newsletter, which I really appreciated. And I think the most important thing for me is that I get a sense that people are actually reading what I'm writing, because I remember a colleague from the Faculty of Media, Art and Performance who said, you know, when I give a recital and somebody writes about it, you know, online or something like that, millions of people will read that. Whereas when you write about dead people, who knows how many people will read it. So I figured by writing about the living, I was actually in a much better situation, following in you know, Brenda's footsteps.
We have a question in the chat from Donna. Barbara, I am wondering why you wanted to publish an open education resource under a no derivative license. These seem like competing intents, and I would like to know more about your decision process. I also asked you about that. Are you intentional about this?
Actually, I have changed my mind. If you know anything about LibreText, the deal is that you can do anything, and I mean anything, with my source once it goes online with LibreText. It literally will do anything but kiss you on the lips, I've been told. You can download it. You can just do a song and a dance. And I think I was just really scared in the beginning that all of a sudden I was going to watch a movie about my life with some weird person being cast as myself, and the ending of the story being changed. I died tragically or something like that. And I think it just really scared me. And I had a conversation with Christina Winter, our copyright person, about that, and explained that. And she said, if you're that scared, here's the license for you. And then I just went for that. So I have changed my mind. I think I've gotten less fearful. Also because I think it was my first time, and it is not really a textbook as such, right? Even though Scott Wilson made it work for his students. So I think that was my decision around that. I hope that answers your question.
I do understand when it's deeply personal. It's the same with Indigenous knowledge. You don't want derivatives. Sometimes with artwork, you don't want derivatives. So it makes sense to me when it's something very deeply personal that you would want to keep those restrictions on it, and yet have it out there openly. Brenda, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, it occurs to me in ways both of these books represent that form of advocacy work. Your intention has always been to share your story, Barb, to work with people who suddenly find themselves in that situation. And we've both emphasized the flexibility of updating or changing. And I think that's really relevant. Both of these are living documents, and they will change. We want to have that flexibility. And I also just wanted to thank you for Barb, for showing me the analytics, because I just went on that for the first time and I was like, wow. So that's how I know who's been reading this. And that's affirming. And, you know, it's, you can go back a year and see, you know, the numbers. That's something you can't, normally do. But in Catherine's talk earlier, she talked about how the medium we're building this together, and it can change according to what your needs are. So creating the vehicle is what she said. And I think we're still all sort of on the cusp, right? This is evolving, and there's so many things to address in the larger picture, like AI and the poly crisis that she spoke of to rob from her. But there's so much going on right now. This is a way to kind of reflect in a big audience, like globally, on whatever topic is nearest and dearest to us. And I find that really compelling. We're all looking for some agency and ability to change the script a little bit and have stories that are normally not heard brought forward. So yeah, I see the potential just growing on this.
May I just say something about this last project that I talked about, the study, multi-authored study? So the interesting part was that when I first pitched this to my colleague in Australia, she said, I can't, Barb, no cost, open access. No, I can't. My university requires me to publish with, you know, a traditional publisher. 6 months later, she was told by a university that her position would be cut because they cut at the top end. Was the top professor in her department. They cut the 2 top positions. And then she is now no longer with that university and actually returned to the one in Australia that she was at before, who said, you can come back. You are an honorary professor. That's fine. And then she said, let's do the open access. I've always wanted to do it. I'm so excited about it. I walked her through Pressbook. She goes, Barb, we can do this. And that's exactly what I feel like. But Shauna, I will definitely ask you for more help as we, you know, put this all together. Oh,
and that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott has said happens rarely, but when students use AI when writing about Barb's book, it often thinks, I think based on the title, it's a how-to book for aspiring CEOs.
Remember, Scott, how shocked I was when you told me that there was a plagiarist? I will never forget that. I actually write about it in Right on Time, where I'm like, how is this possible?
Yeah, it really ends up being a really nice relationship between author and students. In the illness narratives class, it's memoirs, obviously written by real people and their experience. And despite that, for years, it's been a struggle to get students to not think of those authors as fictional characters in a sense. So it is nice to have Barb be able to come to class in person or on Zoom and talk about the writing of the book, and you know, the feedback from the students about that, and you know, inspired to read it because Barb speaks so passionately about it is really important. So I believe the student in question just had not attended that or very many other things, but I guess another plus is being able to use some of these resources that are new, and it sort of limits the temptation for students to cut some corners. You know, they basically have this chance to hear Barb and speak with Barb, and so I recommend it for that as well.
Wow, thank you for letting us know how your experience of using it as well, Scott. and your reasons for doing so. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you to our presenters. It's been a really interesting session, and I hope everyone will continue to come to the boot camp sessions. We have a lot more tomorrow and one more session today on creating a work plan for your proposal.